It's international break, which means slim and meagre pickings. Some might say barrel scrapings. So we asked you, lovely lot, for your video ideas, and we've got some really, really good video ideas, which we're going to be covering on both channels over the next 2 or 3 days, because you've given us more than 6 ideas, which is absolutely great. We thank you very much for that. This particular video is a sensitive one, and it's something that I did discuss over on Patreon a few days ago, but for reasons that should become apparent, I wasn't totally comfortable speaking about it a few days ago because it's got to do with David Gold's shares. Look, clearly there's a family grieving at the moment, so I do want to be a little bit sensitive about it, and it does feel a little bit odd talking about the shares, but for reasons that we will discuss in another video over on the main channel, which will be all about the what do we call it, the embarrassment clause geo elapsing, which basically means the club can now be sold without any penalty being paid to basically the London Mayor's office, or whatever you want to call it. It becomes pertinent, and David Gold's shares do actually become relevant. I just want to say, at the start, I do think it's incredibly sad. I feel, terribly, particularly sorry for the granddaughter, Scarlett, who's, and very recently has lost not only her granddad but lost her mum as well. But I just want to sort of park that to one side, really, because there are shares now there, and if you read a lot of the reports, you don't know. Some people are suggesting Sullivan's going to hoover them up. Some people are suggesting Kretinsky's going to hoover them up. I've certainly got my own ideas about these shares being sold and where they'll go and what's going to happen with them. Gio, what were your initial thoughts on it, mate?
To be fair, I mean, there's also talk about they could end up in a trust for a couple of years as well because of taxes and whatnot as well. And it could actually be quite hefty payments for the family if they were to sell them now. I don't know enough about stuff like that. I only learned about it through people that subscribe to our videos commenting about it. But without that, if I put that to one side and pretend it didn't exist, for example, I would like to see them sold in the summer. I know it's, like you said, it is insensitive and stuff, but at the end of the day, it's still the football club, it's still the business, and it's still a big summer for West Ham. Whether we stay up or go down, it's a big summer for this club, and it's a large stake in the club too. It's not a few percent or anything like that. It is a huge stake in the club, so it does need to come to a conclusion sooner rather than later. What do I think will happen? In all honesty, I don't know. I keep changing my mind, Gonzo, because you see these reports, you think, oh, I think that'll happen. Then you see contradictory reports, and it makes you change your mind as to what you think will happen. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in the likes of Manchester United at the minute. The bids are flying in for there, but they can't both buy the club. So that means that there's at least one party that was willing to pay billions for a football club that doesn't have a football club. So there is potential buyers out there. We might just, it's a bit like when we go to buy a player, you almost have to let the likes of Man United do their pickings first, and you pick up what's left kind of thing. And they get the first dibs, if you want, on the superstars, and then the ones that are left over, that's when West Ham go to the table and feed. And it's a little bit like that. Once the likes of Man United have done their selling, then if there's any potential investors or complete takeover people out there, West Ham may become appealing. But it's an interesting one. There's a lot of sort of noise around the London Stadium at the minute as well, which I don't believe in coincidences. So when stuff like this comes out at the time when the club could be sold, I think this seems a little bit.
What stuff are you alluding to?
Well, all the freedom of information stuff from between Karen Beatty and Lynn Garner, the LLDCs come out now, and it's quite clear that from the end of 2022, Karen Beatty was very much making it clear in her methods of communication that West Ham were open to buying the London Stadium, and that hasn't been leaked by West Ham, which also I think adds a little bit of what's the word? It just makes
authenticity.
A little bit, yes, it does. Yeah, because if it come from the club, you think, oh, do one kind of thing, but it didn't. This has got nothing to do with the club. This has been requested, and it's through the Freedom of Information Act we've been able to see it now. And there's little bits that's redacted, but you can still see the point, which is West Ham are interested in purchasing the stadium, and Karen was obviously disappointed that they had shared financial discussions with Pi Capital, and West Ham haven't had the same financial discussions. So I can understand, and the response was, well, we've got a dispute going on with something else, so why would we start another conversation? But my point is, it's clear that West Ham are open to taking on the London Stadium. So I just think it's a little bit too coincidental.
Yeah, I mean that is an interesting one. Without, I don't want to digress too much into it because I've
Yes.
got something on gold shares. But I mean, I think the thing that is interesting how the stadium's going to play out is as I understand it, I might have this wrong. And look, you know, we will get things wrong. We're not experts in stocks and shares. We're certainly not experts in acquisitions. We are just a couple of blokes who are West Ham fans who built a YouTube channel. So we know we don't know this stuff. But as I understand it, any public building that gets sold on, which is what the Olympic Stadium is, has to go out to tender. I don't, as far as I understand the law, they can't just sell it to West Ham. They have to basically offer it out. But anyway, so we'll discuss that. That's going to come up soon. I'm pretty sure we'll rinse that subject for all it's worth. But back on the gold shares on this, there's been a little rumor going around at the moment. That's not a rumor. Let's say a conspiracy theory that the gold shares will be available for less money if we go down, and either Kretinsky or Sullivan will hoover them up. I mean, firstly, let me just say this. If what Gio says would turn out to be correct, let's say Jim Ratcliffe doesn't buy Manchester United and he comes in and buys West Ham. No one that buys West Ham is going to be interested in buying a few of the shares. They want Kretinsky's shares, they want the gold shares, they want Sullivan's shares. So let's just rule that out for a second. So with that in mind, I'm not convinced that it really benefits either Sullivan or Kretinsky that much by buying gold shares, unless they're going to move the club on really, really quickly. If you already own 30%, yes, I guess take a little bit more and you get overall control. But Sullivan, it shows he's not bothered about that because he had overall control. He was happy to relinquish that anyway. Had 51%, didn't he? So anyway, so I don't think that's that important. So what I do feel is important, though, this big conspiracy theory about, and Gio will know what I'm about to say now, that if we drop down to the when we drop down to the championship, let's hope it doesn't happen. If were we to drop down to the championship, that basically either Kretinsky or Sullivan could buy up gold shares on the cheap. That why I don't. There's no benefit in the Gold family doing that. None at all. None. What? Because here's the thing. That if they've been bequeathed that, if that's their family, part of their family inheritance, if let's say their family inheritance is well, this is why I'm sort of uncomfortable saying it, but I'll say it because it is to do with Sam. If their family inheritance is worth 200 million, let's say, we drop down to the championship, then what they've been bequeathed is suddenly worth 50 million. Surely, if you were that family, you'd think, well, okay, well, we'll just wait until we're promoted again, until basically the inheritance is worth 200 million, particularly if, you know, we don't know about the inheritance tax and stuff like that. I see no benefit. So I actually think if we get relegated, they're less likely to sell the shares, because if they have no interest in running the club, then they'll sell them when the value is high. Look, you know, those are just my thoughts on it, really, in terms of the inheritance tax and stuff like that. I don't know how it works. As I say, we're not experts on this sort of thing. I absolutely know if you were to be bequeathed your house from your parents or something, you'd have to pay inheritance tax above and beyond the set limit. I know that works for something like that. I'm not sure how it works with bequeathing businesses or shares, which is what that is. I wouldn't be surprised. And I'm sure somebody who knows about these things is in the comments below, is going to explain it. And it will be very welcome if you do, because that's a big thing, right? If at the point of them inheriting this, they're going to lose a massive percentage into basically into the government's coffers, then I don't know. I maybe there are ways around it. Maybe there's wiggle room, something like that. I don't know. Ultimately, Gio, I know you don't know. What's your hunch? Do you think the shares will get sold?
Yeah, I think it's difficult, really. I mean, like I said, there's more than one person said that they would have to go into a trust for 2 years.
Okay.
And that would make things awkward, because that would become a huge stumbling block. So if someone did want to take over full ownership of the club, someone's like, well, you can't for at least 2 more years. And so we've thought this embarrassment clause was the biggest barrier. Well, actually, now there could be something, an even larger barrier there now, which is preventing the full sale of the club. So we don't know. It's something, like you said, you require more people more clued up to inform us on, really. But if that wasn't a thing, then I would expect them to be sold. I wouldn't blame the family if at this point they just want rid of it. If they're just like, oh, but I mean, it's difficult because you're almost trying to second guess someone's feelings, and it's not really something you can possibly do. Does the family look upon it as the legacy of David Gold and they want to keep it going, or do they look upon it as just this hassle that perhaps they felt was detrimental to David Gold's life in his later years, and that well, he should have got rid of them that years ago. He didn't, because he's a big West Ham fan.
Yeah.
But we're going to get rid of it. We don't know. You're second guessing what an emotional family going through traumatic time is going to do. So it is difficult, but at the end of the day, and I'm sure. Well, I say I'm sure. I wouldn't be surprised if Daniel Kretinsky sat there wondering what's happening with it as well, because he'll be looking at it we're looking at it from a fan's point, which is what's best for West Ham. That's how we're looking at it. Family are looking at it. What's best for us, the family, rightly so. Kretinsky will be possibly looking at it going, what's best for me?
Sure.
Daniel Kretinsky, investor, ploughed in tens of millions into this football club. What's best for me that happens here, and how can I make that happen so I can enhance my investment? I can protect my investment at West Ham. Sullivan's a bit more of a difficult one because he's got a lot more going on in there. He's got the emotional aspect as well as the business aspect.
Sure.
He's in a very difficult position. We've got a lot of sympathy for Gold's family, rightly so. But I think it's a bit too easy sometimes to disregard David Sullivan's feelings because he's just lost his business partner for decades.
For sure. Yeah.
So at the minute, it's a very difficult time for David Sullivan too. But for Kretinsky, I don't know, as an experienced businessman as him with a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, be interesting. I mean, this is one chapter. It's a bit of a horrible one, but it's one chapter in the story of the takeover at West Ham. There's going to be more and more reports to come between now and the summer, and hopefully we get a conclusion soon. But am I confident? I don't know, Gonzo. I'm not really that confident actually that it's going to be coming to an end anytime.
No, well, you know what? I haven't got a clue either. But you know what? We thought it was sort of it was time that we discussed it anyway. If you want to hear a little bit more about this, we very much split this video in two. Vladimir Sufal has
possibly let something slip, hasn't he?
Yeah, with regards to the ownership, which may well point to it being Daniel Kretinsky. So if you want to hear more about that, please keep your eye on the main channel. We will try and put a link in this video that links directly to that. But it's probably best if you are subscribed to both Hammers Chat channels. While you're there, give it a thumbs up. That'd be much appreciated. And if you ding the bell, ding the dong, as we say, then you'll be notified every single time we upload. Right, we're off to do another video. Gio, cheers, mate.
Catch you in a bit.